Hi, it's Katrina.
Number 8. Old Kinzoras. There are only a handful of known places in the world where an entire culture lived underground in caves. One of these places is Old Kinzoras Cave Village in Armenia. Once upon a time, it was home to a thriving population, though now the whole place is empty. The first written record of people living in caves here dates back to the 13th century, but archaeological evidence shows people were here for at least 300 years before that, most likely living in obscurity and isolation. They turned the side of the mountain into a maze of caverns and chambers. Looking at the village from far away, it looks like the mountainside is riddled with little niches, but those are all entrances and houses, all part of one enormous complex. As of the early 1900s, there were about 8,000 people living within the subterranean city. They were spread between around 1,800 houses, so it must have been pretty cramped. Each house was stacked one on top of the other with multiple rooms. You could get from one part of the city to the other by using tunnels winding through the mountain. There were other things inside the city too, like churches and schools. Tradesmen had their own businesses working with leather and dyes. There were stores to buy things, and there was even a sacred fountain believed to have mystical powers. All these things are technically still in the city, they're just empty or ruined. The place was abandoned right after World War II, and anything of worth was later pillaged from the ruins. Number 7. The Edinburgh Tunnels. For decades, locals in Edinburgh have told stories about a secret tunnel underneath the city stretching the length of the Old Town, from Edinburgh Castle to the Palace of Holyrood House. Mary, Queen of Scots, supposedly made her way through the secret underground passage to meet with forbidden lovers. There's even a tale about a drummer who was sent into the tunnel so that cartographers on the surface could hear his drumming and track the tunnel overland. Only nobody ever saw the drummer again after he entered. All these stories were told, but there was never any evidence that such an underground passage existed, not until recently. A tunnel was discovered hidden behind a fireplace in the gatehouse at Edinburgh Castle. The fireplace had been removed for cleaning as part of a new maintenance scheme. Nobody expected to find a void underneath it, a secret passage leading to below the level of the dry moat around the castle that was created in the 18th century. The tunnel leads beneath the moat in a straight line to Castle Hill. This thing could have been used by anyone in the castle to covertly slip outside the castle grounds and do whatever it was royal people did when they snuck out at night. The tunnel is still a mystery because nobody knows who created it or how far it even goes. A team of excavators have only revealed about 450 feet of the tunnel. It could go on indefinitely for all anyone knows. It's being suggested the tunnel was used as an escape passage. It could have been a military storage area. It may have even been for Catholic priests and bishops to move freely into the castle during the Reformation. The fun part about the mystery is that there are so many potential options for what the tunnel was used for, and by who. And now for number 6, but first, it's shout-out time! I want to give a big thank you to DHUR9OI and Shaggy Martin for supporting this channel. Thanks so much! Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos like these. Number 6. Lagar Uasa. If you haven't heard the word troglodyte before, I suggest using it as often as possible going forward because it's an awesome word. A troglodyte is somebody who lives underground or a cave dweller. In the northern region of Malta, a place famous for its caves, there have been multiple troglodyte cultures over the years. In Meliha village, there's a forgotten cave sanctuary called Lagar Uasa. It's tucked away in the cliffs upon which modern buildings rise against the sky. You can easily see the entrances to the underground world when driving past. People who live in the apartment complexes below can look straight into the mouths of the cave dwellings where troglodytes once lived. The caves are part of a largely suppressed history. People lived in them for centuries until the British colonial government forced them to evacuate in the 1830s. The British frowned upon troglodytes, so they forced the people to join the outside world against their will. These days, nobody really visits the caves. They can be found in the village and sprawling along its outside outskirts in the rocky cliffs. They should be a major tourist attraction, but unfortunately they are in a poor state of preservation, slowly decaying. Many of the caverns are overgrown and dangerous to enter. The strangest part is that there isn't much history on how they began. Historians know when the people were kicked out of them, but there is little available information on the origins of the Maltese troglodytes. People have lived in the area since around 3000 BC. St. Paul was shipwrecked here just a few years after the death of Jesus Christ. But the history of the cave people is a mystery. Have you ever been to Malta? Let me know in the comments. Number 5. The brutal murders of the Canary skeleton cave. On the Spanish island of Gran Canaria, archaeologists are trying to unravel a puzzle. They discovered the skeletons of 6 young men inside a cliff cave. The skeletons were left inside the cavern face down, their hands tied and their bodies covered with stones. All evidence points to a violent death for the 6 individuals. They met their makers sometime before the 15th century when the Spanish conquered Gran Canaria. The cave is called Caleta de Arriba. According to Veronica Alberto, the leader of the excavation, the burials of the men signify a funerary practice that involved symbolic violence. Or it was something even more horrific. The bodies were forcefully placed in the rock, then had stones thrown on them. Some were strapped in place, or they had their limbs bound. Archaeologists can't tell if it was an aboriginal burial or if the Spanish were somehow involved. Gran Canaria was populated by troglodytes before the Spanish showed up. Archaeological evidence has shown people from North Africa migrated to the Canary Islands around 6000 BC. It happened after the Sahara Desert went from a lush wilderness to a barren hellscape. The people arrived on the island and gradually became a distinct culture known as the Guanches. They spoke their own language, lived in caves like trolls, and had a few visitors over the years. Roman records show that people knew about the troglodytes of the Canary Islands. The Carthaginians visited, perhaps for trade. So did the Phoenicians and the Romans. But going forward from the Dark Ages, the Guanches mostly lived in isolation. Nobody really bothered them until the Spanish conquest in the 15th century, which saw them horrifically defeated. Scholars say what happened in the Canary Islands was a genocide. They have also suggested it was the barbaric tactics used against the Guanches that the Spanish employed later during their colonization of the Americas. The Spanish didn't just defeat the Guanches, they stole their land and enslaved them. They forced them off their ancestral islands, out of their caves, and obliterated their culture. Now, archaeologists are finding brutalized skeletons in caves. The skeletons may have been from an indigenous ceremony or something awful done at the hands of the invaders. Number 4. The Cave of Wolves. There is a small cave in Germany that contains mysterious canine fossils. Scientists believe the fossils could belong to some of the earliest modern dogs. The people who used the cave were extremely early dog breeders, prehistoric hunter-gatherers who domesticated animals around 17,000 years ago. Gnurshol is located in the Hegau-Jura region, with the canine fossils predating other ancient canine fossils by roughly 3,000 years. Researchers from the University of Tübingen conducted DNA analysis on the prehistoric canine remains. They belong to dogs, foxes, and wolves. The results show that humans were feeding the animals themselves, giving them a diet of low-protein foods. Furthermore, the DNA analysis revealed that the creatures in the cave cover the entire genetic range from modern domestic dogs to modern wolves. What does all of this have to do with a lost cave civilization? Researchers say the people here tamed and bred various wolf lineages to create domesticated animals. These were the very definition of troglodytes, primitive human beings who sought shelter in caves and migrated along hunting routes. Yet they were able to genetically modify beasts of the wild to become their pets. Your own dog, be it a Chihuahua or a sheepdog, can trace its lineage back to the beasts of this German cave and the hound masters who made it all possible. What do you think about your dog being related to ancient wolves? Let me know in the comments below and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Number 3. The Grand Canyon Caves. According to U.S. parks, there are around 1,000 caves in the Grand Canyon. Of those 1,000 caves, only around 335 have been recorded. Even fewer have been mapped. There are a lot of rumors about ancient civilizations dwelling in secret caves within the canyon, and while it's definitely a possibility, based on those numbers alone, there are over 700 caves that have yet to be explored within the Grand Canyon. In the ones that have been discovered and investigated, there are signs of human activity. Archaeological evidence proves that human beings have been living in the Grand Canyon for about 8,000 years. Rock art has been found dating to around 6,000 BC. Then, starting in 1000 BC, villages appeared along the canyon terraces. 2,000 years later, there were at least 3 distinct cultures flourishing inside the canyon. There was plenty of room for them, considering the Grand Canyon is around 2,000 square miles, making it roughly the size of Delaware. These different cultures lived in villages and potentially in cave towns that haven't been discovered yet. They certainly made their homes in caverns and natural subterranean layers throughout the American Southwest. Groups like the Anasazi made fantastic homes out of the desert caves. Doom came in 1150. People started to leave the Grand Canyon. By 1400, the exodus was complete. Everybody in the canyon left, abandoning their homes and fleeing to parts unknown. Scientists still have no idea where they all went or why they fled. There is one Native American group that still lives in the canyon, the Havasupai. The elders still recite their origin myths that were passed down through the centuries. However, they are a puzzle to anthropologists who can't trace their true origins. Number 2. The Bidayu Caves. Gua Sireh Cave in Borneo is covered in charcoal drawings that look like they may have been made thousands of years ago. But according to researchers who just studied the cave paintings, they were only made in the 18th century. The limestone walls of the cavern are covered in hundreds of bizarre charcoal drawings. They depict abstract designs, people wearing headdresses, weapons, animals, but for years, interpretations have been sloppy since there was no proper dating done. Now that researchers know they were created in the 18th century, the images are starting to make sense. Gua Sireh Cave contains around 406 motifs, which have been slowly documented over the past 3 decades. They were made by the Bidayu people of Malaysia. These ancient people used the caves as hiding places during a period of colonial violence. The caves were initially occupied 20,000 years ago. Ever since then, indigenous people have thrived in this exotic part of Malaysia. But in the 17th century, conflict arose between the indigenous hill tribes who lived in the caves and the elite Malay from the cities. The Malay chiefs would terrorize the hill folk, demanding they hand over their children as tribute or else face terrible violence. This went on into the 1800s, with the indigenous cave people hunted like animals. There is a local legend that says the Bidayu made a final stand at Gua Sireh Cave, fighting off 300 armed men, while most of the tribe escaped through a secret passageway in the back. The charcoal drawings in Gua Sireh are the sad remnants of the end of the indigenous way of life, made by people forced to hide in the caves like hunted animals. Number 1. Ramses II Burial Cave. At a popular beach in Israel during some recent construction work, a cave was discovered. A team of archaeologists was sent to explore the mysterious cavern, only to find themselves transported back in time. They entered a cave no other humans had entered in 3,300 years. The archaeologists discovered a ton of items from the late Bronze Age, with many from the reign of Ramses II, also known as Ramses the Great. It was only discovered at all because a rock shifted and fell out of place, revealing its previously sealed entrance. When the researchers with the Israel Antiquities Authority entered the cavern, they filmed their journey inside. In the footage, you can hear the archaeologists gasping in wonder as they come upon the dusty jars and shattered pieces of pottery littering the floor. Then they found skeletons. In the corner of the cave were some very old skeletons clumped together like a set piece from Indiana Jones. Most of the vessels were likely imported from Lebanon and Cyprus. There were also clay oil lamps, cooking pots, and disintegrated organic material. In one place, the team found a decayed quiver that once held bronze-tipped arrows. The cavern wasn't exactly home to a lost society, but the beach was. This is not the only archaeological site on the beach in Israel's Palmachim National Park near Tel Aviv. There is also an ancient fortress used by the biblical Canaanites 3,500 years ago. Researchers have found the ruins of settlements that were abandoned during the Muslim era around 1,300 years before today. The beach has been home to countless cultures, many of which left their secrets behind in caves. Nobody knows who the skeletons belong to in this mystery cavern, only that they came from the time of the biblical Exodus. The cave dates to when, according to the Bible, Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt. Would you ever want to live in a cave? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and I'll see you next time. Bye!